The partition between India and Pakistan happened. Everybody's killing everybody. If I don't get him out of there, they're going to kill him. He landed in England and he had no idea that that's where he was going. He made more money on the weekend than he did in his full-time job. That I liked. People were just coming in, breaking the window, grabbing stuff and just taking it. It was like, what the hell are you doing here? Closed the door on me. 10 minutes later, the cops came. I'm 14 years old. I had no fear. Only because of one reason. My dad was right behind me. Well, you know, my dad, when he was 11 years old, he had a disagreement with his teacher. His teacher whacked him, and that was the end of his education. My dad decided, I ain't never going back there again. He didn't tell his parents, but at the age of 11, he decided to pretend that he was going to school. I don't know how long he did this for, but he never went again. He sort of just stayed out all day, came back home. That was at the age of 11. His parents realized this kid is not going to do anything great with his education. So they got him to work on the family farm for a few years. And by the age of 16, they realized, okay, we need to get him married. So my dad got married at 16. My mom was 13. After the marriage, my mom went back to her house. My dad went back to his house. And then his parents realized, well, how are you going to make any money? At the age of 16, you don't have any education. You don't have a career. You don't have nothing. So they encouraged him to somehow get a trade. And so what he did was he left town and he went to this place called Lahore in India and he learned how to be a tailor. So he did this for 2 years. Now he's at the age of 18, all of a sudden, the partition between India and Pakistan happened. All hell broke loose. Everybody's killing everybody. And my dad's elder brother realized, if I don't get him out of there, they're going to kill him. So at the age of 18, my dad's brother went to Lahore and brought him back home. And that's when my mom joined my dad in the home. For the next couple of years, they had a couple of kids. Once everything settled down, my dad, he only knew that trade on how to be a tailor. He learned that and got better and better at it. And then all of a sudden, by the age of 23, 24, my dad realized, man, I ain't gonna make any money here. So he decided, I'm leaving India and I'm going someplace where I can do something big with my life. And he caught a cruise ship. And he was telling me this. He thought that cruise ship was going to Singapore. But instead, I don't know how this happened. It took him to England. He says he landed in England and he had no idea that that's where he was going. He was on the boat with, I don't know how many hundreds of other people. But eventually he landed in England with nothing. No education, no money. When he got to England, he figured out that there were some relatives that he could actually move into their house. So he went to this house, and in the house there was somewhere between 3 to 5 guys all living in this house. And he just grabbed one of the rooms and he just followed what they were teaching him. And all these guys, they all worked in a factory. They worked in a window factory, a metal windows. That's what they were doing. All day they were making metal windows. So every day they'd go to the factory and back. And one of the guys told my dad, he goes, is this why you came from India? You're going to work in a factory for the rest of your life? He says, you can't do this. You got to do something bigger in your life than just going to work every day in a factory. And my dad said to him, well, what should I do? He says, get in business for yourself. Sell stuff like I do. And so my dad, I don't know where he got the stuff. He grabbed some stuff. He bought it from somewhere. And then on the weekends, he would knock on people's doors and he would show them what he has and he would sell it. And he would make a profit. And he'd do this every weekend. And he was actually making a lot of money. Eventually, he made more money on the weekend than he did in his full-time job. And he realized, in order to make more money, I can't carry this stuff. So he needed a car. So would you believe it? He goes and buys a car, gets it parked in the garage, and he couldn't even drive. Then he took a driver's test, but he had to pay the guy to get him a driver's license because back then it would take him ages to get the license. So he literally paid the guy money to get his license so he could get the car, so he could fill up the back of the car with more stuff so he could sell it. So as he was selling this stuff door to door, he started making a lot of money. When I say a lot of money, I mean enough money that he didn't need his job anymore. He literally replaced his job income on the weekends and he started making all this money to be able to buy his own house. And at that point, that's when he got his brother over and his wife to join him in England. So now all of a sudden, my mom comes over, she's got the kids with her. My dad now is working with his brother and the two of them are selling stuff on the weekends, and at the same time, they started making so much money that they ended up buying retail stores and houses, and they became very successful. Their business was called Gardner Brothers, and everybody in the town knew of them and respected them because of their success. You know, when I look back at my dad's life and I talked to the people who knew him, he was such a big deal to these people. And to me as a little kid, I didn't know shit about what my dad was really up to. And as I got older and I started looking back at his life, it's only now that I can see little things, little nuggets of unbelievable wisdom that my dad had. That if he had only told me what he was doing at the time, I could have learned so much. I'll give you an example. One occasion, he asked me, I'm going to the wholesalers. You want to come with me? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, look, we're going to go and have some rasmalai afterwards. Well, that I liked. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll go. So went to the wholesaler. My dad's making the deal with the guy who owns the business, but I'm not even interested. I'm just thinking about, I want to eat the rasmalai. And then afterwards, we went. And I remember me sitting in the restaurant with my dad and loving the rasmalai. And then he got me hooked on it because a week later, he'd say to me, I'm going to another wholesaler. I says, yeah, I'm coming. Because I knew I want the rasmalai. But when I was there in the wholesaler, if he had only told me, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm buying this stuff to be able to sell again. So I want you to watch what I say to this guy because my goal is to try to get this guy to sell me this stuff for the least amount of cost so that I can sell it for more and make profit. If my dad had taken the time to tell me this, I would have sat there watching him and seeing all the different words and his body language because the guy was brilliant at this stuff, but I didn't know what he was doing at the time. My dad took me to this one place and he bought a whole bunch of stuff and the guy told him, okay, it's going to cost something like 2,000 pounds, which is like $4,000. And my dad pulled out a checkbook and hands it to him. And the guy starts writing the check. I mean, I'm standing there and I'm looking at my dad. I'm thinking, why didn't he write the check? He's just giving it to the guy. The guy writes the check. He turns it over, shows it to my dad. And then my dad looks at the check and signs it and gives it back to him. And I thought, this is a little strange. Why didn't my dad just do this? And when we got into the car, I said to my dad, I said, why didn't you just write the check instead of giving the guy the blank check? And that's when my dad blew my mind. My dad owned all these stores and owned these properties. And when I asked him, why didn't you fill out that check? He said to me, because I can't read or write English. And I'm thinking, what? I'm 14 years old and I didn't even know my dad can't read or write English. How'd you fool everybody? You fooled me. You fooled everybody. How did you get all these businesses when you can't read or write English? You see, that's what I realized. My dad never made any excuses. He just did whatever he had to do to get the job done, to provide for his family. If I knew this stuff that he was doing at that time, I don't know if I would take it seriously. But the fact is, there were so many things that I could have learned from my dad at that age if he'd only tell me what he was doing. One of the greatest things that my dad did at the age of 14, he realized that my mind was not in studying. Just like him when he was 11 years old and gave up on school. He could see that's where I was headed. So at the age of 14, my dad comes to me and says to me, I just bought that store across the street. It's empty and I bought it for you. What do you want to sell in it? And I look confused. I'm thinking like, what do you mean you bought it for me? He goes, I want you to have your own business. I know you're going to school. While you're at school, we're going to hire somebody to run the store. But after school, I want you to run that store. So now you tell me, what do you want to sell in it? Because I know you're a business-minded person. Man, he got me so excited. When he said, so what do you want to sell? I said, I know exactly what I want to sell. ADIDAS. I said, I want to sell ADIDAS sportswear. And my dad said, okay, phone him. So at the age of 14, I grabbed the phone book. I opened it up and I called ADIDAS. And I'm on the phone and I said to the lady on the phone, I said, we have a store. We want to sell ADIDAS stuff. How do we buy it? She says, well, you have to come to the exhibition, ADIDAS exhibition, where you can meet the reps and we can show you all the things that you can buy. So me and my dad went. And I'll tell you, when I walked into that exhibition, I walked in as though I had all the confidence in the world. I mean, I walked in like this. I'm 14 years old. I had no fear. Only because of one reason. My dad was right behind me. I could feel his presence. And that's why would I be afraid? I had all the confidence to talk to anybody. So I walked up to the reps and I said to them, I said, look, me and my dad, we have a sports store and we want to buy ADIDAS. And the guy says, he goes, we can sell you ADIDAS, but your first order has to be 2,000 pounds, which is $4,000. This is back 40 years ago. And I thought, $4,000? I said to my dad, he wants $4,000 for the first order. And my dad said, don't worry about it. And I couldn't believe it. So I said to the guy, okay, we want those shoes, we want those t-shirts. I'm picking all this stuff and my dad's not saying anything. He's just letting me go do everything. And I'm thinking, this is fantastic. It was like Christmas. We'll take that. We'll take that. We'll take that. So I took the order. The next couple of weeks, my dad went to another wholesaler. We spent almost $8,000 over the course of the next 2 to 4 weeks. I had no idea what my dad had actually done for me until 30 years later, after he had died. And I don't even think my dad realized how great a thing that he was doing for me. I'm thinking to myself, my dad risked $8,000 of his money on me. And that's when, in my head, it dawned on me that my dad, by his actions, was saying to me, I believe in you. Prove me right. You can do this yourself. So I ran that store for like a couple of years, and man, that ADIDAS stuff was flying off the shelves. But when I say flying, I'm talking about it was being stolen, right? People were just coming in, breaking the window, grabbing stuff, and just taking it. And I thought, okay, you know what? This ain't gonna work for me. So then I started refocusing on my studies. And I got to the point when I was about 17, 18 years of age, and I said to my dad, look, I'm busy studying, but I need to make some money. I think I'm gonna get a part-time job over at that guy's grocery shop. And my dad looked at me, and I could see the anger on his face. He goes, don't you dare insult me by working at that guy's shop when we have our own shop. If you want to make some money, go out and sell something. Have your own business. And then I thought to myself, hold on a second. You know what? I love Adidas. I got a way that I can sell Adidas without it being stolen like in the last thing that I did. So I got Adidas catalogs, and I got my dad's car, and I said, I'm going to sell this stuff door to door. So I went to the richest area that I could find, which was Harborne in Birmingham, drove there, parked the car, got out. I started knocking on doors with all the confidence that, yep, I love Adidas, but no one's going to steal this because it's in a catalog. Knocked on the door, hoping that somebody would open it. Nobody did. Then I knocked on the next one. Nobody opened it. Knocked on the third one. This only happened in movies. But a woman came to the front door, wrapped up in a bath towel and a towel on her head. It looked like she just came out of the shower. And I said to her, would you like to buy some Adidas sportswear? I don't think the look on her face was the kind that says, yeah, give me a couple of those pairs of shoes. It was like, what the hell are you doing here? Closed the door on me. 10 minutes later, the cops came, and the cop said to me, sorry, you can't do this here. You're not allowed to knock on people's doors and interrupt them to sell stuff. And I thought to myself, okay, this is a short career. Lasted about an hour. At least nobody stole anything. I got back in the car, drove home, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do now to make some money? So after that day, basically in my mind, okay, I need to stop this business stuff for a little while and focus on my studies. So my dad convinced me. He said, why don't you become a pharmacist? If you go to university, become a pharmacist, then you can open up a whole bunch of pharmacies and you'll be in business for yourself. But at the same time, you'll have a trade. And at the time, it sounded great. So I went for it. But I realized what a disaster. I hated studying with a passion. And I literally flopped all my exams. And I never made it to university. I never became a pharmacist. But everything that I learned from my dad, I then took it to Canada when I got married in Canada. And that's when my life actually started in the business world. My biggest regret with my relationship with my dad was this. I wish that when I was younger, that my dad actually explained what he was doing in his life, rather than me to just try to figure out things just by watching him. If he had taken the time to have a conversation with me, to actually coach me and teach me, look, this is what I'm going to do when I go here. This is my goal. This is what you should be doing. When I did the door-to-door business, why didn't he teach me what he did? It was like my dad did so much stuff, but the gap was the communication. He never taught me verbally saying, okay, this is what I did. Years later, I'm trying to go back now to try to piece things that he didn't teach me, but that I could try to figure out, did he do this? Did he do that? And I made sure that as I raised my kids, that so many times I would try to talk to them and teach them everything that I was trying to do, so that this way they don't fall into the same disadvantage as I fell in, simply because my dad didn't teach me more. So I would hope that I could go back in time and my dad would sit there and say, do you know why I open this and pray every morning? Do you know why I go to the wholesaler and say this to him? Do you know how I went and did door to door? Do you know how I fooled everybody that I couldn't read or write English, and yet we were able to buy all these stores and these houses? I'm like, man, I wish he had just talked to me, so I'd never wanted to make that same mistake with my kids.